As we peel back the many layers of our family history, we've traced our bloodlines to the first immigrant named James McGuire, who came to America from Fermanagh County, Ireland in the 1770s. He first lived in Virginia and then settled in Kentucky, where he became a lieutenant in the Revolutionary War. Grandpa James fought and died in the famous Battle of Blue Licks in northeastern Kentucky, where his regiment was ambushed by a pack of Indians and British. James fought with Daniel Boone, the great frontiersman, in that battle. You'll find our grandfather's name inscribed on a monument in Blue Lick State Park, commemorating what some historians call the last battle of the Revolutionary War. Before his heroic death, James had married and sired 7 children, one of whom was a son named Archibald. Archibald McGuire begat James Adger, who had 13 children, owned a tobacco plantation, a mansion house, and 15 Negro slaves. James Adger begat a son named Hiram, who begat a son named Milton Butler, who begat a son named Isaac Talmadge, born in 1903, our father and grandfather. From our McGuire ancestry, those of us here are 7th, 8th, and 9th generation Americans. Let's now cross over to the other side of our family tree and briefly examine the Donahos. They also came from Ireland in the early 1800s, where they first landed in Maryland as indentured servants. As part of the westward expansion, they soon moved to Sumner County, Tennessee, near Nashville. Several of them stayed, but in 1828, William T. Donahoe, a great-grandfather, headed a wagon train of settlers to the rich farmland and prairies of southern Illinois. Following the commandment of the Lord to the Israelites, the Donahoes became fruitful and multiplied, so much so that they soon established a community called Donahoe Prairie in Marion County, Illinois. They became farmers, business owners, auctioneers, teachers, preachers, barbers, butchers, wagon masters, Indian fighters, and soldiers. Of course, a few were scoundrels, drunks, gamblers, and horse thieves. This is actually an illustration of Uncle Rufus, who was caught stealing horses. And here we see an artist's depiction of a Donahoe family gathering where they're having a lively discussion of politics and religion. Very animated, rather expressive people, as you can see here. After the death of Johnny Amos, Mary Alice's father, the children were subjected to a county commissioner who tried to put them all in an orphanage of some kind. They were saved by Grandma Green, who was willing to share her widow's pension in order to keep the family intact. Melinda Green was a colorful lady whose husband, Wilson Y. Donahoe, died in the Civil War and is buried in Nashville. Grandma Green smoked a corncob pipe, was a shearer of sheep, and a midwife. She lived to be 100 years old, outlived 3 husbands and 2 children. Let's focus now on the 2 folks we know the best. They were affectionately known as Tad and Mary, Isaac Talmadge McGuire and Mary Alice Donahoe. They first met at the Brown Shoe Factory in Salem, where they both worked. Tad was 25, smart, hard-working, and handsome. Mary was 19, a raven-haired, buxom beauty with a little bit of Indian blood that made her dark eyes so alluring that Tad nicknamed her Love Eyes, and he called her that until the day he died. Tad had lost his mother when he was only 6 years old to an epidemic of Rocky Mountain spotted fever. He was then raised by a stepmom named Emma. Mary had lost her father at the age of 12 and was raised by a stepdad named Walt Thomas, who was often mean and abusive to her. So with their deprived and difficult childhoods behind them, Tad and Mary let the wedding bells ring and they began a new life journey together. And they became one flesh through their firstborn daughter, who they named Betty Jane. Betty was so pretty, bright, and precocious that her grandma Frona called her one of God's projects. Betty worked as a dental assistant for the only dentist in Salem. She moved to Peoria, Illinois after high school and attended Bradley University there. She then moved to Chicago and at the age of 23 met her husband Melvin, who is now 92 years old. If the theory is true that birth order affects behavior, then Betty is the perfect example. As her siblings grew up and left home, their first stop was Chicago, where they all stayed with her and Mel for a while. She was like a surrogate mother, protecting, providing, nurturing, and advising each one. Betty Jane thought it was her responsibility to mentor her siblings, which she did with grace and wisdom. She impacted all of our lives in positive ways. Next came Richard, a bouncing baby boy bursting with energy, mischief, and fun. Tad took his son everywhere, to taverns and dog fights, wrestling matches, and train stations. Dick was a handful, but Mary loved him so much that she gave him to the Lord at the age of 4, making a pact with God to spare his life from deadly pneumonia during the Great Flood of 1937 in Caruthersville, Missouri. Dick gave his life to Jesus at the young age of 19, spent 4 years in the Air Force, stationed in Japan. He spent the next 40 years there, where he and his wife Winnie were missionaries to the Japanese people. Another girl popped out next, a perky little redhead named Barbara Sue, a strong-willed daughter who knows what she likes, lots of friends, laughter, work, and fun. Barb worked at Boley's Ice Cream Cafe in Salem while in high school. She was one of the cheerleaders for the high school football team where her brother Richard played in all the games. Barb was so proud of him. When he wasn't out working on the railroad, Tad would come to see Barbara lead the cheers and watch his son play football. When Tad would let out a special whistle, Dick would know for sure that his dad was in the crowd. Barbara Sue received an associate degree in business administration at Eastern Illinois University. She then moved to Chicago and worked for the Arthur Rubloff law firm. Soon after that, she married and has lived in St. Joe, Michigan for many years. In 1937, another daughter was born to Tad and Mary. Shirley Ann would be the tallest of the sisters, with dark hair and eyes like her mom. Shirley had a spirit so sweet and a love of learning. When things became chaotic in the McGuire house, Shirley would go to a private place and read a book. She loved to sing and had a lilting soprano voice. When Bobby was a toddler, he would crawl past everyone to be with Shirley. They had a unique bond in various ways. Shirley was smart and made good grades. Like her sister Barbara, she went to college in Charleston and then moved to Chicago, where she worked in administration for the Pure Oil Company. She then married and helped her husband Clay take over the Ozarks Mountaineer magazine. She lived in the Ozarks for many years, and then in Augusta, Georgia, near some of her children. After Betty Jane, Barbara Sue, and Shirley Ann, another red-haired baby came knocking on the door. They named her Bonnie Lou, and she was daughter number 4. She was popular in school and had lots of friends. Some folks thought that she and Barbara were twins. Tad and Mary loved their children with equal affection, but Tad was very fond of Bonnie because she looked like his real mother, Nora. Bonnie would often cut her dad's toenails when his belly was too big for his reach. Bonnie shined shoes in her Uncle Pat's barber shop when she was just a teen, cleaned people's homes, worked as a waitress, and went to beauty school after high school. A hard-working lady with many different skills, Bonnie has been a nurse and a small business owner. After marrying and living in Chicago and California, she has lived in Cincinnati for over 40 years. In 1944, Richard was now 12 years old and had 4 sisters. He was hoping the next child would be his first little brother. Betty gave me the name Robert Eugene. My siblings called me Bobby Jean, and Mary referred to me as the last button on Gabriel's coat. With all the kids off to school and no playmates near our shanty in the country, I created 3 imaginary friends, Bill Pegg, Connie, and Dee Dee. I was about 4 years old and still don't know how those names came to me or what they mean. But my parents played along, and often, at my request, they would actually set a place at the table for my little friends. Like my sisters Shirley and Betty, I had a love for words, stories, and books. After 1 year of college in Charleston, I joined the Air Force and was in Austin, Texas for 4 years. Then I moved to Chicago, where I worked in advertising for 5 years. In 1972, I moved to Cincinnati, stayed with Bonnie and Lowell for a while, found work in sales and marketing, and later became a stage actor and a film actor. Married Dee in 1980 and lived in Cincinnati until 2012. And now it is August 2013, and here I am in Tennessee talking and sharing with all of you. My dad's name was Isaac, Yitzhak in Hebrew, one of the founding fathers of the Jewish faith. My mother's name was Mary, Miriam in Hebrew, the name of Jesus' mother. The firstborn of our clan married a Jewish man and converted to Judaism. The second-born became an evangelist and lived out the commandments of the New Testament. I believe God's hand has been on our family and that He has a purpose for each of our lives. I pray that all of us will continue to love one another and come together as often as we can. Thank you, and God bless you all.